Hi, I'm Adam, and this is the Uplink Port. On today's episode, we've got more broken things, a Linksys ATA box, the SMC is back, and finally, oh, the little Stingray's making an appearance. So whether you're into retro networking equipment or just curious on how things work, stick around. Hello, video editing Adam here. I won't take up too much of your time because I'm trying to put together the video that you are watching right now, which I'm currently editing. But during all of the editing, it's actually flagged up a bit of an issue to the point where this was actually supposed to go out a couple of days ago, but because of this, it's actually delayed it. Now, this was 2 weeks in advance than I'd originally planned, so I'm trying to get into the process of actually trying to do these videos more frequently for you guys, but there is an issue. So I've always tried to do the best I can for this since the start on the budget that I've got. When I originally started this, I had a really cheap lav and receiver kit, which very quickly went back. And I invested in a newer KM23 lav mic and receiver, which you've got there, you've seen me using. Now, in that first video I did, it was very noisy in here, and I assumed that the microphone was doing sort of audio reduction and whatnot to try and pick up me. So I ignored it, carried on editing the video, which is why I put the MSAN in the office next door when I did that video for the previous one. Now, even in that video, there was an awful lot of distortion on audio from me, which I put down to my inexperience in configuring the microphone setup on the receiver. Now, fast forward to this video, I've actually been doing some bits in the background that had no interference whatsoever and actually took the time to try and set it up. However, the audio issues were still there. So I reached out to Newer and said, this is what's going on, and they very quickly responded to me and said, can you send us an audio file of what you're receiving or what you're experiencing, and we'll have a look. So I did. And to be fair, they very quickly came back and said, yes, that microphone is broken, we're going to send you out a new one. So that is on its way, and I thank Newer for being very responsive to that. So this one, rubbish. Now, during all of this, I've been quite impatient to get the rest of this done, and all of this has been recorded with that microphone. I have done all I can to try and sort out the audio, and it's not half bad, it's not perfect, but you guys deserve much better. So I have invested in the newer CM23 Professional Series lav and receiver kit. So hopefully all the audio issues going forward are going to be fully resolved. And yeah, I can spend more time focusing on doing videos instead of actually having to re-record several parts of it over and over again until I actually get a usable clip. So I will leave you in past Adam's hands, and I hope you enjoy the video. Okay, so I just want to kick this off by saying a massive thank you to everyone that has subscribed, liked and commented on the past previous videos. You don't know how much it means to me to actually see you lot engaging with me while I go through this journey. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Not only does the MSAN put a huge smile on my face when I'm resting around with it, but also this has put a huge smile on my face as well this morning. I ordered a t-shirt last week, and I'd actually mentioned in a clip that actually hasn't made it into this video because the weekend's happened, and since the weekend this has actually turned up. So I thought, why not re-edit the rest of the video and do the rest of the video in my wonderful merchandise, actually a bit more presentable. Now, it is a bit tighter than I originally thought it was going to be, so it just reinforces the fact that I need to spend more time down the gym or more time carrying this around because it's quite tight in place. So, hey ho. Right, enough of me babbling. Let's get into this and see what we're doing today. Right, today there's a few things we want to do and go over. Now, number one, in the first video that I put out, it's quite evident that you guys actually like me messing around with the hardware and actually seeing this a bit more. Now, I can't keep the chassis in here, as I said from previous videos, it's a bit too noisy. But what I do want to actually do today is mess around with the exchange side splitter on all of this. And what this should enable me to do is inject both the data, or DSL, and voice, PSTN, which will be generated from this analog to digital ATA box, into the front side of the splitter, or on the back of it, out through the analog cable that's coming out of it and to the customer side socket for both voice and data. So I want to see if we can actually get dial tone and broadband or DSL through this like you would do in a typical exchange setup. So that's number one. And the second thing we need to go over is PPPoA, or point-to-point over ATN. Now, in the previous video, all of this was configured for PPPoE, which is absolutely fine. It's working, no issues at all. That actually brings me on to another point. In the previous video, I referred to this as an LNS, or Layer 2 Network Server. It should actually be referred to as a BRAS, Broadband Remote Access Server. The difference is when you're terminating direct, you terminate into a BRAS. When you're actually buying in off of someone who is then terminating connections first, they will typically deliver the DSL service to you over an L2PP tunnel or terminating on an LNS. And unfortunately, force of habit, that is how I operate in the industry, but it's a BRAS, not an LNS. In a future video, I probably will add a second device in and we will configure it as such in which there are both. You can see them in operation. But for now, BRAS. And where was I? Oh yeah, right. We need to look at PPPoA. The reason being is when I was going through the documentation for Smoothwall and actually looking at setting all this up again, it reminded me that back in the early 2000s in the UK, when ADSL was first deployed, PPPoE wasn't the standard protocol for encapsulation and authentication. It was actually PPPoA, because a lot of the ADSL networks were built on top of ATM networks, which is why PPPoA was in use. Now, you could, in some cases, use both. This particular chassis, as it's one of the more modern ones, doesn't support native PPPoA, and if it did, it would then mean me reconfiguring everything, because the MicroTik doesn't support PPPoA termination. I would actually have to drop some series of Cisco in to do the PPPoE termination and then reconfigure all of this. We're not doing that. Looking through the documentation for this has actually got a transition mechanism between PPPoA and PPPoE in order to facilitate the ability to migrate between chassis when you're doing a ATM to Ethernet migration at an exchange. So if I can find that in here, we'll turn it on. We'll have both running then at that point. I have no idea if you can only use one or the other, but we'll find out. But it then means that we've got PPPoA and PPPoE available to us. So we should be able to configure Smoothwall to at least use one of them. So then I can actually get that set up and working moving forward as well. So we'll jump onto the GUI in that very shortly in order to do that. And the SMC is making a return. So yes, we're going to be using that as well. So I want to get it working on that. Now, theoretically, the Draytech does support both of them as well, and it would make sense to use the Draytech as we've got PPPoE working on it. We know that works. But equally, I can fire this up and hopefully set this up for PPPoE, which I think it supports, get that working as well, and then test on that going forward and then see how long it takes before the GUI breaks on that as well. So yeah, we'll see what's going on. Right, let's get this powered up in a way that enables me to do both things that we've set out to do and take along for a ride. Right, I'm probably going to jump over to the screen capture because I said we'll do the PPPoE stuff first because it should be relatively quick, and then we'll come back to the bench and start looking at the PSTN stuff. So right, let me move this and I'll be back in a bit. Right, I do apologise if you can hear the MSAN in the background. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get it in the room next door and also put the splitter unit on the desk next to me. The cable that links the two together just isn't long enough for it. So what I've had to do is put the MSAN out the way and isolate it as best as I can, and that's included removing two of the fans from the active fan tray, which has triggered an environmental alarm, but at the minute it does seem to be happy running. So moving forward, I either do need to get a longer cable to enable me to actually put it in the room next door, or try and work out some sort of sound isolating cabinet that it can sit in and live in while we do these videos. So the SMC, I do have a video on me going over it very quickly as to what I did to get it working. Unfortunately, I recorded that out of sequence, which I did actually say in that clip. So it doesn't quite make sense in how I'm going to split it in or slot it in even. So I've thrown it to the end of this video, which you can go and have a look at afterwards if you want. But it's nothing really too complicated as to what actually occurred with it in the end. It was just more potluck really than anything with getting back into it. Speaking of which, let's go and jump onto it now and configure it. Now, I haven't done anything with this since I factory reset it, so I don't actually know if saving these settings is going to cause another 404 error. Right, let's go back into here. For your reference, it is in sync, and just to show you that, we'll jump onto this page, which is under ADSL. Right, there we go, that's in sync. So we need to configure this for PPPoE again. So let's jump on and do that quickly, and also update the VCI values. Now, there is a difference, as I mentioned in the previous video, between VC Mux and LLC. It's not my area of expertise, but fundamentally the difference is VC Mux came out more with the PPPoA era, and LLC came out of PPPoE and removed a lot of the limitations that VC Mux has. VC Mux is a channel-based encapsulation protocol, which basically means PPPoE and IPTV consume a separate channel within VC Mux, whereas LLC removes all of those limitations. So it's a lot more flexible, it's a lot more future-proof, but we will be using it for PPPoA moving forward. For now, as the MSAN is still configured for LLC, that's what we're going to use. We're going to use PPPoE. The username, I believe, was Adam, and the password was 1234. Let's save that. Now let's reboot this. Now, like I said, I've not touched this since I messed around with it and factory reset it. So it's entirely possible that submitting this is going to end up with the 404 error again, but time will tell. Fingers crossed. Now I have actually just heard the relays clicking on it, so it does seem that it's rebooted. Now it rebooted previously and the login screen came up and we got a 404, so I won't celebrate until we've got past that page. Now let's see if that is there. This is taking a little bit longer than it normally does. Right, okay, the good news is the web browser's back, so let's jump onto advanced setup. In fact, let's jump back to here. That's currently connected, which is good. In fact, we might as well just check the PPP status from here, which is saying not... Oh, connected, fine, fantastic, perfect. Right, that all does seem to be working, and let's jump back to here because I think we can run a diagnostic test. Now, the micro tick here is not uplinked to... Apparently, it is uplinked to my router, so all of that is working as it should do. Oh, no, tell a lie. .30 is the gateway for the brass, so that all makes perfect sense. Right, that is all working. Let's jump onto the MSAN and see what we need to do in order to enable PPPoA. Right, so this is what we're actually looking at. PPPoA to PPPoE, PAE or PVC. This feature allows the system to translate PPPoA packets to PPPoE packets and vice versa to allow communication between CPE clients and an access controller such as a brass through the switch. Now, I recall reading somewhere in the guide that this could be done via the GUI. However, in this particular guide, it says it only needs to be done via the CLI. Now, as many of you know, I don't have a serial cable effectively at the moment to do this. Now, a good friend of mine, Stuart, has actually spent some of his time in the background researching this while I've been off doing other things, and has actually very kindly found the pin out and also the cable type I need in order to make that work. So I will build one of them, and probably sooner rather than later if I actually need it to do this. But I remember something in the GUI about it, so we'll dive through the GUI to see if this is possible, and also what exactly it means in terms of vice versa, in that can we have both running at the same time, or is it purely like PPPoE to PPPoA or PPPoA to PPPoE? Let's have a look to see what we can and can't do. It would be nice to have both as an option, but I'm not entirely sure. You might actually be able to do it. Whether I have the knowledge to do it is another thing, but let's jump on and see what we can do with it. So let's jump on here. Now I've configured everything on the local LAN today, so I can just get to it without having to mess around with moving cables. This was 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to see the environmental alarm on this, as I've already said, because I have disabled fans, but that's perfectly normal, expected, shall we say. Now, I believe it's going to be under port settings because all of this is the switch, although it refers to the switch, all the ports in this are separate line cards, so they're all going to be under here for separate things. Now, PVC is the PPPoE side of stuff. I believe, if it's in here, PAE to PVC. Is that what we were looking for? PAE to PVC. Right, let's see what this is. Okay, so it does appear to let us load a VPI and VCI details. Now, this isn't matched as to what the PVC is, which is interesting on the other one. So I don't know if this is a separate configuration. I don't know if this is the PPPoA side of it, and the other one's PPPoE. let's see if we can run both together. So let's put this as 38 and we'll leave that as LLC. We'll leave the VLAN as default. That is port 1. Let's apply. Cannot set existing PVC. So does that mean there's already one in place for PPPoE? Let's just quickly load. There's nothing to modify. Let's just delete everything. Let's reload. Let's try changing that back. No. I get the sneaking suspicion it's going to be one or the other. Let me click modify. And there's no profile on that, and I guess it's going to moan about there being no profile, right, which it is. Right, let me have a quick work on this and see what we need to do to get it working, and I'll come back. I don't believe you can have both PPPoE and PPPoA set up at the same time. You might be able to for the backend CLI or potentially messing around with this. I'm not entirely too sure at this moment in time. What I believe we need to do is actually factory reset or default that particular line port and set it up for PPPoA. So that's what we're going to do now. Now, just for reference, this is still, I believe, connected with PPPoE, which it is. So let's go and default port 1 and then see if we can set it up for PPPoA. So we're going to default port 1. Yes, please. Now this is going to remove all the ADSL profiling as well on this particular port, including all the speed profiles and everything, so I'll need to set that back up. Let's do that now. That has just resynced, or at least the relays have clicked on it, so I know it is doing something. Let's jump onto port 1, re-enable it, set the ADSL profile back to that, apply. And then let's go back to PAE PVC. I'm going to load slot 1. I'm going to change this back to 38. VLAN is final 1. I'm going to set it to VC Mux. Apply. VLAN ID already in use. Okay. So does that mean I can change the VLAN without, if I put it on a different VLAN, because we're not tagging any traffic back and forth yet. So is it just going to tag it switch side and untag it out on the Ethernet port to enable me to see it still? I'm not entirely sure. Let's just change the VLAN to VLAN 2 and see what happens. Right, that is enabled us to set that at least. If we jump back to the barricade, it's showing it's not connected, which would make sense because it's configured for PPPoE still. So let's go into WAN. Let's change it to PPPoA for VC Mux, which I believe is what we set this to, which we did. Right, so let PPPoA VC Mux, save, reboot. And while that's rebooting, as I said, my concern is regarding this VLAN ID, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so unfortunately, the SMC is just constantly trying to sync at the second. Well, I say constantly trying to sync. It's not even flashing the sync light. So either something's happened to the SMC or it is the profiling on all of this that's causing the issue. So instead of me making this an hour-long video again, what I would do is I would dive into all the profile settings in the background and see if I can come up with something that works and then report back. Although literally, as I ended that, that's just come into sync. So it makes me wonder whether that is playing up. But right, let's see if it has a connection. Right, well, we don't have a WAN address, which means there is no authentication. It is in sync. There is no PPP status. I should jump into the log. Apparently PPP1 is connected, unless it's connected while we've been talking. No. Right, I get the sneaking suspicion it's that VLAN ID, either that or something quirky is going on. So let me go and actually check all this again, and I shall come back when this screen is connected. We are back and we are connected with PPPoA. Now I haven't done a diagnostic test to actually prove connectivity. I was saving that for this, so we will do that now, and hopefully that does go through, which it has, which is really good. So we're definitely connected with PPPoA. Now, the issue was, as I said in the previous video when I was actually configuring it, is it was going to be that VLAN. Now, I had hoped in my heart that on the MSAN it was doing some form of internal tagging and passing it off as an untagged port, but that doesn't appear to have been the case. It does look like it was passing the tag on the whole way through, and of course, because we're not doing anything with that VLAN tag, of course, nothing was working. So I've actually put it back to VLAN 1 on the PPPoA side and configured it for 038. What this has highlighted as well is you can't have both PVC, PPPoE, and PAE, PPPoA profiles running together. If you configure one and try and configure the other one, it turns around and basically says another profile already exists. So what I've had to do is put all of my default configuration on PPPoA, which includes the VPI and VCI details along with the VLAN. And then on the PPPoE side of stuff, I've literally left the port as default, and I've literally used it as or put it onto an unused VLAN, which is VLAN 3. This does mean that moving forward, we will actually need to know specifically which ports are configured for what encapsulation type, but at this moment in time, that doesn't matter. I will just make note of that. Potentially at some point moving forward, we could maybe do an interface with all of this that enables us to say, right, we want port 1, we want this router and this encapsulation method, and it will go off and do it through the background as to whether this has got an API or some form of programming interface that we can use to achieve that. I don't know, but that would be good to look at. Now, I don't know whether you can hear, but the MSAN is getting rather unhappy that it only has a few fans currently running on it. So I am going to finish off all of this, put the fan tray back as best as I can with it, and we'll start messing around with the PSTN voice injection to see if we can get that working. Right, I will see you over on the bench. This is going to get split out a little bit. It's just I wanted to show the front of this before I spun it around in order to give me the space I need to do to actually do this. So the MSAN, as I said, is actually sat on the floor just out of view. The feed from the MSAN that's delivering the ADSL signal is coming up through the telco cable and into the front of the ADSL splitter. On the rear of the unit, you have the user port and the CO port, which we'll look at in a bit more detail once I spun this around. And they're the two ports that we're mainly going to be focusing on while injecting the voice into this through everything else. So, on the front of the device, I said ADSL is coming in. Currently, it's coming out via this cable, which is coming out on the user port. Now, these are mapped to the filters on the front, as we've said in a previous video. That's coming through the telco cable. It's then being split out via the pairs, which are just here, which is then jumping onto the smaller cable, which is then running off to the NTE, and the DSL signal is coming out at the top. Now, the SMC is still plugged in, it's still in sync, and everything's working as expected. What we now want to do is take a voice or dial tone signal from the Linksys ATA box and bring it into the front of the NTE where you can plug a phone into it. Now, the Linksys is already configured. It's configured for one of my VoIP hosts internally. It is literally just running as a SIP extension. There's nothing special to it, but it is generating a dial tone, which we can hear on the phone. So hopefully you can hear that. Now, in order to get this to work, we need pairs 1 and 2, which I have already stripped off and found in the bulk cable that's going through using the CO port, which is the central office port, which is what you'll inject the voice signal into. Now, if my understanding of this is correct, the voice will come in here through the splitter, get merged together, come out, round into the NTE, and then out of the phone socket via the BT port, and then obviously the DSL signal will continue on as normal. So we need to get that into here, and in order to do that, I've got a sacrificial RJ11 cable that I'm going to use. Now, the pin out for the ATA box is pins 3 and 4, I believe. I will double check that before I do that. This is a 4-pin RJ11 cable, so I can pull out pins 3 and 4 on that as well, and push the voice into the PSTN side of the splitter, and hopefully get it come out on the socket. Let me go and grab my wire cutters and we will start. These cables are quite inexpensive and I don't mind cutting these up. They are of the type that is extremely inflexible, so I'm hoping the cores inside will actually work with the jelly crimps that I've got over here on the left hand side. I have seen a few before where the outer sheath is so thick that it makes it really difficult for the jelly crimps to go through them. Now, I do have a stripping tool for this, actually. It is in the drawer and I have forgotten to get it out, and that is exactly why we use a stripping tool, because I've just pulled off the outer sheath of that copper pair, but fortunately we don't need it, so I'm literally just going to snip that off and get it out the way. Now, it's pairs 3 and 4, whichever white and brown, I think, given the fact that that is in the middle. Yes. So we're going to jumper those onto these two. Now, if I had been prepared, I would have already got these out. Now, these have been in the bag so long that I am surprised that they haven't, well, most of them are falling apart, as you can actually see here. So I'll try and find some working ones. Right, there's 2. Let's throw those out the way. Let's throw that out the way. There is an A-B way for doing this, but it's not really going to matter for this. So let's jumper that onto that. Let's get the crimp tools. And we're going to crimp that one on. These are also external jelly crimps, which means they're full of like a sticky, gooey substance to make them waterproof when they're out in the field. And we want the brown one to blue one as well. Now, I'm hoping this just works, and in theory it should just work, but there's also a complete possibility that it doesn't. We will find out. Right, that is jelly crimped. Let's get rid of that. Now, this is going to need to go into the back of phone 1 on the ATA box, which is literally an RJ11 cable as well, so I'm going to get that out of the way. We're going to plug in the CO side into phone 1. And now we're going to pop that to one side. We're going to free the phone from its cable layer. Going to take the phone plug. Now, hopefully, if this just works, there'll be a dial tone on this port as well. The DSL's still in sync, so whatever this is injecting hasn't interfered or done anything to that at the minute. Let's plug the phone in and see if we get dial tone. Are you ready? Do you want to hear first? Let's see if you hear first. Let's move the mic. Right, here you go. You tell me if there's dial tone. Can you even hear dial tone? I don't know. Let me hear. Yes, there is dial tone. That is amazing. Right. That was as simple as I expected it to be, and also extremely disappointing that it wasn't more complicated, because I really enjoy playing with the hardware side of this, and I know you guys enjoy me playing with the hardware side too. It's just unfortunate that there's very little to do from the hardware side of stuff. All of this is very much configuration based, and I should probably put the microphone back on my top. Now, as we're here and we seem to be on a bit of a roll, shall we see if we can get the ADSL light to go solid on this? Now, the only problem is I don't know if this is going to work without any drivers, and I also need to USB power it and connect it to, I mean, to be fair, it's already plugged into the SNC, it's that cable anyway, but I need to USB power this, and I don't have any USB ports anywhere close for me to be able to do this. I do have the brass that is sitting below the desk, which is still powered up, which does have a USB port, so why don't we go for broke and see if we can get this powered up and with an ADSL sync as well. See if this still works, or even if it was. I don't know if it's going to work. I don't know if it needs drivers. Right, let me throw that there. Let me grab the brass and see what happens. I am literally just adding to the carnage on my desk, aren't I? Right, the brass is here, and the only reason I brought this up is because it does have a USB port, so it should be able to power this. But as I have said already a million times, I don't know if this needs drivers, and I could be setting myself up for massive disappointment. Right, let's pull out the cable for the RJ11, which needs no pulling at all because the clip on it is basically busted. Let's move that out to one side. Let's plug in the USB and see what happens when the lights come on and seem to stay on. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I can't remember what these did when they was first powered on. I can't imagine this booting. It's just a modem. It's just going to get power and Maybe I should just get a USB power bank and power this without anything on the other end. I don't know whether this is doing something funky with that for these lights to stay on. Right, let's make probably do a clean as well. Let me go and grab a USB power bank. One USB power bank. Let's take this out of here. Let's move this out of the way to give myself a bit more space. Right. Let's now plug this in with the USB power bank and see what happens. Right. That's a different set of lights. I've actually got a flashing red USB and no ADSL. So clearly the MikroTik was doing something with this that it didn't like. Now the flashing red USB, I'd imagine, is because it's not connected, it's got no drivers. The question is it going to initialize even the ADSL side? So let me plug this cable in and see. I don't think it's going to, personally, but we can live and hope. Now that port is configured for an 8 meg profile, which this does support, but there is literally nothing. So my assumption is the USB drivers are needed in order to drive this and control the ADSL interface, which means I'm not going to get a green ADSL light on this today, which, let's be honest, I kind of knew that from even attempting this. I just wanted to see what would happen and if it would work. But it does mean that we will be plugging this in the next video into a Smoothwall host with all the drivers on it. That reminds me, I need to find the USB drivers for it, but it will be configured hopefully in a Smoothwall host, and hopefully have that ADSL light green, Smoothwall connected on PPPoA, and then we can start moving forward for the rest of the stuff that we need to do this. Right, let me tidy up all of this, bring everything back up onto the desk and finish out the video. There is no way I can do this intro with this on, so I'm going to have to turn this off, unfortunately. And silence has returned. I'm only going to get the opportunity to do this video once, because otherwise I'm going to have to power this back up and actually make sure it powers back on. So this intro now needs to be perfect. Intro, outro. See, I've already screwed it up. This video has been an awful lot of fun. I have really enjoyed messing around with it. I'm so glad we have PPPoA working. Yes, it's not in the context of being able to use both of them together on the same port on the line card, but being able to even have PPPoA working anyway. But it does give us the perfect scenario that does need that for Smoothwall. But on the other hand, hopefully we can use PPPoE. I would just like to be period correct with it, and I'm fairly sure that that was PPPoA to begin with. But as I said, we have now both to mess around with. This project is getting bigger and bigger and heavier and heavier and noisier and noisier. I would love for this to be in here more often while we're actually doing stuff and sat in the background, but unfortunately the DSLAM is just too noisy. Even with 2 of the fans disconnected and the alarm on that you saw earlier, it is just the background noise is very difficult to edit out, and while it is possible, it changes the overall tone of the audio, and I'm not experienced enough to be able to be messing around too much with the editing process. So we will leave it off, or as I said, have it in another room for the short term while we do these videos. But we are making progress with everything, and I am thoroughly enjoying messing around with it. Now I know PPPoA today was a bit of an extension to the PPPoE stuff. I hoped messing around, although be it very quickly, with the PSTN and analog injection side of stuff was, albeit short, but hopefully of some interest to a lot of you. We will be moving forward with the other hardware side of stuff on all of this. So we will be setting up the modem with Smoothwall, getting all Smoothwall configured, getting all that running. I do have a list of other things that I want to run through with all of this. It is actually on my phone, which ironically I'm using to record this, so well done Adam for preparing. But we're progressing. We're getting there with it. I'm, as I said, thoroughly enjoying myself with all of it. So yeah, stay tuned. There is more to come with all of it. Yeah, and that does include me bringing down some of my old hardware from a loft, which I do have a picture of, which I will throw somewhere up on screen. We need to make a decision as to which one of those is actually going to be running the Smoothwall server going forward for that to plug into and connect. I cannot remember what hardware I've got in any of those. I know I do have a Dell, which I believe is from the era, but whether or not it is actually going to be compatible with Smoothwall from a chipset and network point of view without messing around too much, I'm not entirely sure. So we will dive into that next time. There's a load more we want to cover off on this. There's a load more messing around with it. And once we've got what main aim with all of this is out of the way and done, we'll start looking into the other areas of it as well. I want to get more line cards for it. I want it in here more often. I need to get a cabinet, or at least some form of noise cancelling cabinet for it to sit in, or a longer cable for it to sit in the other room so I can actually have it running all the time, because I have to build this up every single time we want to use it and then power it down and move it, because this is my general day-to-day home office that I'm working from when I'm not doing any of this. So it does become a bit of annoying, and it eats into my time as well. There's much more I'd rather do actually messing around with this than moving it back and forth. But that is my problem to deal with, and hopefully as we grow and I get more interest in this, then I can actually start to invest more into what we're doing with it. But hey, anyway, for now, I hope you've enjoyed the content. I hope you've enjoyed me rambling. If you do enjoy the videos, please give it a thumbs up. Please also subscribe if you would. I've seen a lot of you subscribe over the past couple of weeks, and it really does impact my positivity on doing these videos. So if you do, I would appreciate it. But enough from me. I will leave you all in peace. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.